Hi everyone. I've been wanting to do a little bit more with the channel for a little while now, and I thought something that might be fun is just to make some assets. Actually, taking something from ideation all the way through to being in the engine. I find that playing games actually makes me want to just go and make art sometimes. I'll often just look at random stuff in the environment and try to think about how it was made and what it's sort of doing. And that can get me in trouble sometimes if I'm in a raid group. I think that that could be a really fun process to go through, actually, sort of looking at stuff that's already been made, trying to reverse engineer it, then try and recreate it. I'm going to start with one that I've actually already done before, admittedly, but it was a long time ago, and I think I can do much better. And I think that that would just make this a good sort of practice run for this process. So let's give it a go. Okay, so what we're going to make today is in Destiny 2. All right, so what we're going to make is this right here. This kind of netting. Just because there's actually like a bit going on here. The model itself is not super complex, but there's some like interesting shader stuff going on here. The mesh is actually static. It's not moving. It's being offset on the GPU side by the shader. And that is fun. I also don't like my feet don't fall through, right? Same reason. That's all the transparency is in the shader as well. But I've done the netting part before, but what I want to do differently this time is I actually want to include these bits as well. I'm not actually sure what these things are called. I swear they're a real thing. Pretty sure they're on like aircraft carriers and stuff. Flight deck nets or stanchions, right? Is that what I'm looking for? I guess that's these, right? My sister would be very upset with me right now. And I assume it's actually mostly so in case these guys fall or something. All right, so let's take some screenshots of this. Just so that we have some visual reference, because I'm not going to leave Destiny open while I'm working. Sorry, random people whose names I'm getting in my video. So one thing I'm trying to identify here is just how much movement is actually happening in the netting, right? Because I want to try and recreate that. I'll probably double check it when I'm at that stage when I'm putting the shaded part together. And the pattern of the blinking, right? Like the texture there. Because there's kind of a texture on the glass already, right? Mesh. But it's going to be cut up, subdivided. I actually don't think it's that much, but let's be safe and do as many sort of rungs as we have. 3, 9, and by 11. So we've got the 9 by 11 here. We're gonna do this sort of full PBR, so we're gonna need all those channels, but we're also going to need a couple extra things. We're going to need, obviously, the alpha, because we need to cut out these spaces, right? And we're going to need to make a kind of a mask for how the sort of wobbling works. Kind of want to do this a slightly harder way. It's probably unnecessary, but it will be more fun. So it might not even work, and I might bin it and then just do everything in Photoshop. But I kind of want to make the netting itself as a mesh as well. At least I'll see how I go. I might end up scrapping that. We'll see. Okay, and then we got the lights. So this is obviously mostly a kind of just rounded, sort of rectangle shape. It has like a rectangle. Okay, I think I'm ready to start modeling this. I just realized I actually missed something. There's these bits on the end as well. And this is not a big rectangular bit, it's pipes. So I actually made a mistake in my design of the geometry there, because I didn't look at the top. I only looked at it from the side. Measurements, huh? I'm going to vaguely measure by eye with the character as a reference. Go 3 by 4, because it doesn't look quite as warped as that. It looks closer to square than a 3 by 5. And it's actually a little bit more even through the middle than I thought. which means I don't really need to do a texture for. Well, actually, no. But depending on how I do the unwrap, I might need to do a texture for. Okay, so this is going to be square. So let's do 3 meters, and let's then. I'm going to do this with 2 materials because I'm going to want this to be two-sided, and I don't want to solidify it because it's not solid. Which means I am going to want to do this as 2 materials because I don't want to make the whole every other part of my mesh as two-sided. So I can do the wobble in the material. Now we actually are more or less done with the net. So we'll move on to the rest of this. So I'll model the component parts first. These two kind of cylinders with these blocks on the ends, right? And they run the length of it, all the way from the start to the end of it. So let's make, and I should try to think of how this would work modularly, right? Because they're not going to make these as a string of all of them together. They're going to make one, and then they're going to make this connection. Yeah. All right. These are lights, right? These bits here. They're actually probably the most complex part of the whole model. So I'm going to have to fit 2 of these here. So let's eyeball that to probably about that. You know what? I don't think I want to do this with a subdivision surface anymore. And I'm just going to use bevels. I'm just going to, I do need to apply those transforms again, I think. And I'm going to instead just use a bevel to make these rounded edges for now. So the question I have is if I should Boolean the middle of that out. I'm not typically a fan of Booleans because they make it hard to keep nice topology, but it is going to be the easier way to get that shape, especially as smooth as that. So I think I might have to. Next bit, this kind of bolt. Obviously, it's a cylinder, and it's got another cylinder. I don't think these are geo, and none of the stuff on the top is geo. I'm not sure if even that little bit of a cap there is geo or not. I also think this is mirrored through the mirror here, through the middle here. This bar is one whole bar, but it's been modeled just this bit and half of this, I think. You can actually kind of spot it in the texture details sometimes. So you can see like these blemishes here match these blemishes here. The bar isn't because the scratches don't mirror. You can see by like just some of the way the edge wear is that that has been those are sharing UV space, right? Which means they've probably been modeled and then flipped over. So you know what? I'm going to try and do it that way because that's how they did it, and that's the whole point of this exercise: is to try and do it how they did it as much as I can extrapolate. Oh, gross. Okay, because the cylinder's in there. So, but it will give them all the same textile density, which is what I want. And it's actually pretty apparent that the net actually has a different textile density to the rest of this, um, which makes me chuckle a little bit. There's more resolution on these than there is on the netting. But that's okay. But also that looks awful because of pipe. Pipe look bad. So one of my kind of hacks for doing this, which I think I'll get away with it, is actually just to put an edge loop in the middle of it, right? And then mark that edge loop as a seam. It's not a great solution by any stretch. Not at all a good solution. But it's the one I'm going to do. And I think that's actually probably good to export. So say that, export it. All right, hide you. You back. Okay, this is actually probably fine. Although the unwrap is not going to be right. Because what I'm going to end up with, right, is a black and white gradient across this. And I'm going to rotate it and do this. I think this is okay. I think that's okay. All right. Now I'm going to export this out. Let's go over to Substance Painter, I guess. Okay. Add bracket. And let's go back. Make all my maps. So we have pretty uniform kind of a steel on most of it. It is a little different on the bars. So let's start with the bars. I didn't really think very much about these shells. I probably should have. So some of those are going to actually be really awkward to work with. I definitely have some gaps in my knowledge of substance. All right. That's looking okay. As the base of it, anyway. I think that's okay. Let's start doing stamping all the details on. So I'm going to do a paint layer, and I'm going to put some bolts and stuff in here. Probably have that in here somewhere so you can see what I'm working to. All right, so there's also an indication of the welding a little bit, I think. There's these kind of raised bits here. Oh, I actually think this is some deformation because they're bolts here, and here they're like these stretched things. That actually looks like it might have warped in the UVs. Like that's not on purpose. Oh, then that's just the sides of these things, I think. Like I had the side profile somewhere. Okay, so it has a bit of a border. Probably could have actually insert that. Might have made my life a little bit easier. And it's got like this kind of bolt shape thing at the end. I'm not even sure if that's going to be metal. I don't want to have to open Destiny up again just to go scrutinize this one little thing, so I'm not gonna. I'm gonna take some artistic license and just sort of paint around it. I always break substance and then forget how to get it back how it's supposed to be. Yeah. Okay. Obviously, I haven't done the emissive portion yet. I'll do that in Photoshop. I'm gonna be much happier doing that in Photoshop. Um, it's just gonna be like a bit here. It's gonna be fine. Just a radial gradient that's stretched the length of this really. Let's render these maps out. The net shouldn't be as bad on the substance side. Okay, so it's largely like just a vinyl-y thing. I kind of want to just do the textures for this one in Photoshop. I am actually going to do that high poly. I just think that that's going to be one, something I haven't done before. Like high poly bakes I've done, but not what I'm trying to do here. Two, I think it's going to afford me a few opportunities to do some more interesting things in Substance that are going to give me a nicer texture without me needing to do everything over in Photoshop and then also probably not get as nice a texturing job. So I'm going to see how it goes. It might not work. I'm not even entirely sure how I'm going to tackle it. I'm going to try a couple of different ways and see which one I think works better. I am over engineering the solution to this problem. I don't need to be doing this. Uh, but I'm curious of how it will turn out, and that's why I do half the things that I do. All right. Figured out the skin modifier. Thank you, Google and blenderartists.org. Cool. So I want to use that for my bake, which should also then give me a good indication of where my alphas should be cut. Do I do the baking here or do I do it in Marmoset? Let's do it here. Okay. Let's bring it up to 2048. Let's add a high def mesh, which is our hyperlane editing. What? I did that thing that I always do in Blender when I export, forgetting to limit it to selected objects. So I had started making my alpha map manually in Photoshop, and then I was like, wait, surely that's not a thing I need to do, right? Because I have that hyperlane mesh. But I'd not actually done this before. So I went and explored a little bit, and I can bake the opacity over in Substance. I can bake the opacity from that. I just didn't have it selected to begin with. So I did that. I just baked the opacity down, and it gives me this. Much better. Not having to do a whole bunch of stuff manually that I really didn't need to be doing manually. So that's cool. Saved me a whole bunch of tedious work. Now we're going to go back to Photoshop. We're going to work on this bracket. So my emissive, if I look at these lights, right, is going to be actually kind of a complex gradient, I feel. I think the way I want to do this, right, is have like these thin radial gradients that is then multiplied over the top by a wider radial gradient, so that I have these bars, but those bars are sort of more at the end. Yeah. I'll show you what I mean. I could apply the color here, but I'm wondering if I'm going to end up wanting to do a bit of a lerp on the color because it's very white when it's quite bright and it's quite red when it's not. So, and I think just putting red in is just going to make it overblown red. Where I think I'm actually going to want to do a lerp against the strength of it to make it more white when it's stronger and more red when it's weaker. I think we're ready to get into Unreal 3 hours later, 3.5 hours later. So that I'd have a similar-ish backdrop for this, I just brought in a terrain. This is just from the Spring Landscape pack. It's make sure I give it a fair plug. Yeah, this is this. So I'm just going to use this as a little bit of basis, just so I have an environment to put it in. Let's just quickly cube grid up a bit of a space here. I've made it way too big. Oh no, yes, I have. It's way too big. So we want to bring in all of this eventually. Here it goes. Should need two. So M netting net and M netting bracket. I might end up making instances of those so that I can fine tune the values a bit more, but we won't worry about that just yet. So just for now, for the mission here, I'm going to do a simple red, pink, but that's fine. And then a fairly high number, just so we can see that's working. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. Pretty happy with that. Yeah, it's too shiny, but otherwise I think that came up okay. Not as happy with the texture as I could be, but it kind of works. It's fine. All right, so let's build a couple of these out. So we're going to need a bracket first. Let's jump in up. Why did that happen? Oh, I built it on the environment. Here we go. All right. They're a touch small, I think. I think that I misjudged the size a little bit. I think those look okay, and I think the scale's about right now. Okay, so let's get shader stuff happening. So what I want to do for the net is I need to do a world position offset, but I want to do a world position offset against two gradients because it reacts more in the middle than it does on the sides. So I'm going to do a gradient, and I could have done this with a texture as well. I could have brought in a texture to do this, which you're just trading off like shader complexity for another texture. And I don't think there's nothing else. Like maybe I could have packed it into the alpha of the ORM or something. But so let's start previewing that. You can't see that it's going in the negative, but it is going into the negative. Actually, kind of what I want the blinking lights to do as well. It's very similar. It's working. It's just very uniform, which I don't like. I don't like that. So what I'm going to do is, as well as this, I'm going to multiply it against like a noise, right? Subtle, but it like gives it a little bit more character. All right, I will tune those values in a little bit. All right, onto the light. Now, it actually does a double blink though, so the math is going to be a little bit more complicated. I'm going to have to think about that one. That's pretty close, but it does a double blink, and it is a lot redder when it's duller and a lot whiter when it's brighter. So what I'm actually going to do is, fudge that by affecting this as well. I'll be honest, I didn't really expect that to work. So what's happening is I'm running another wave at 3 times the other rate. And then I'm basically subtracting it. I don't know. I'm pretty happy with that. I think that came up pretty well. You'll have to let me know in the comments if you think I did anything wrong, which it's YouTube, so you probably will. But I'm pretty happy with that, and I think I'm gonna call it done. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you did and you want to see more of it, you can do all the YouTube things. Hopefully, I'll make some more of these. And thanks for watching. Ziggs, you are so loud. I hope the microphone can't hear that. There he is, the noisy little monster. Hello.
Yes, I'm talking to you. No, you cannot come out.